All right, welcome back to another segment of Feature Friday. We are here now. We had an unexpected visitor, but I'm glad he came. Mr. Kervance Ross, also known as the Kingmaker of KDR Consulting, is in the house at the Startup Factory. Man, good to have you here today, brother.
Thank you for having me, man.
Man,
Appreciate you.
awesome. So he slid in here, man, real smooth and just kind of sitting back chilling. And I looked up, I'm like, man, hold on. This is one of Mr. Allen's favorite entrepreneurs in all of Atlanta.
Wow.
Mr. Ross. And I said, man, look, you gonna be on Feature Friday today. So this is a total unexpected, off the rip interview with my man, the Kingmaker.
Matt, thank you so much for having me, man. I am always excited to be a part of anything Mr. Allen is doing. He's been a major impact in my life, my journey, and he has set such a pace for young people, young entrepreneurs, and African Americans all the way around. And what you've been doing since I met you about 3 or 4 years ago has impacted me in such a great way, so I'm honored to be with you.
Oh man, it's an honor to have you here. And so let's tell the folks a little bit about your journey and who you are. So tell folks about you and how you got in this business and, as an entrepreneur, and kind of give them a little bit of the backstory.
Well, it's an amazing reality because many of us don't recognize that when the Bible talks about all things working together for your good, you've literally got to count up the good, the bad, the pluses, and the minuses. I am a product of the west side of Atlanta, a place called Bankhead.
Okay.
Grew up in the inner city with at least 4 women in my house at one time from the age of 0 to 9.
Mm-hmm.
And from that time frame, God kind of crafted my life to be able to see multiple generations of women in the inner city pouring into one little boy to cultivate him into manhood.
Wow.
My mom was 24, working for Coca-Cola.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother was a bit of a thug. She worked for a pencil factory.
Okay.
My great-grandmother worked for one of the top physicians in Buckhead at the time, and she was like the help.
Okay.
And my great aunt was the traditional woman. She had been a widow of a man who shared his dad's name, and she had never paid any bills. And I was the only person that knew she lived in a house with a hole in it.
Wow.
And that cultivated everything. And my mom just exposed me, man. And I think that opportunity to be exposed to more than what I was currently in allowed me to start cultivating. From private school and preschool to public elementary school, graduating from Frederick Douglass, playing drums, being a leader. That ended me up with a scholarship at Alabama A&M University.
Okay.
Went to a place that I didn't want to go to. Thought I was going to only be there for 1 year and come back home. And God kind of designed it to shift the course of my life. Did that and got my degree in marketing. Still didn't have any experience, didn't have any internships. Went from selling cars to thinking I was wanting to be a fashion designer to ending up in corporate America with Wachovia.
Okay.
Started from the bottom as a teller. Was only supposed to move up once every 12 months, and in 15 months I had moved up 7 times.
All right.
Moved from there, started working as an account exec for Wachovia in the West End. A good month was $175,000 in deposits, $150,000 in loans, and I'm just hungry.
Mm-hmm.
Black young man from the hood.
Trying to make it happen.
6 months we're doing $2.75 million in deposits, $1.5 million in loans.
Wow.
And we're churning it, and I'm thinking the money's coming in, I'm happy. And I started to recognize I was still unfulfilled.
Right.
And started praying about it, and God was pushing me to do what He had purposed me to do, but I was so afraid because that check on the 15th and the 30th
Right.
was comfortable. And I learned quickly that God is going to do one of 2 things. He's going to allow you to leave it, or it will leave you. And the lady had been promised the wrong thing. They navigated her from Baltimore, left her family back in Baltimore, and every weekend she was transporting and staying at an extended stay on Snapfinger. She lost it. And before a meeting, she picks up a small computer, throws it in my face, and it just missed me. She told me that you're the golden boy, and I'm going to get you fired today. And in the state of Georgia, it's called workplace violence. 3 months before I'm getting married, both of us are terminated. Now, as I look back on it, it was the greatest thing that ever happened because 9 months later, the recession hits. And I started trying to build this business. Started it in my office. And from there, God started lining up everything. And from the next 6 or 7 years, the most tumultuous years of my life, cashed out my 401k, took out a second mortgage on our house, and my wife believed in the vision. And God started identifying the fact that I was called to touch at least 1 billion people before I died and help them obtain their optimum level of purpose, greatness, and success. And kept churning it. And right before we got ready to be evicted, June 27th, I had been putting my time in. Mr. Allen had been giving me opportunities. I'm speaking it, I'm putting it in place. And I got a phone call 8 minutes after they told me we needed to be out on July 1st from a major pastor. He said, I haven't been able to shake your name from my mind. My marketing department is in jeopardy, and effective immediately, I want you to take over as director of marketing for our church. And in 66 days, we rebranded every ministry in the church, published 2 of his books, and all of a sudden from there, God promised me that I would never have a bill that I wouldn't pay. And now, 12 years later, I own KDR Consulting. We do the art of holistic marketing and strategic planning for all of your major corporations, your small businesses, government entities.
Well, hold on. Okay. Hold on. You're good, man. You're good. Hold on. But you got a whole life that we got to go back and hit some key points, man. Hold on. Before we get to business, you've done this before. We got to rewind. So, first.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's go back there.
Yeah.
You can't give me this. I can get my own interview. This man that came in here and did the whole biopic on me. Now, we're going to go back to that, Kervance.
Sure.
Now, I love what you said, because I was also raised by a group of women. My mom had 6 sisters. So I know what you're talking about with the pouring in.
Yeah.
But you can't leave all them nuggets, man, and not explain them. You're talking about the grandma was a thug working the pencil shop. Now, one of Mr. Allen's sayings is always that exposure expands expectation. And so as I listen to your story, I see how you said there was some exposure.
Yes, sir.
And I think that I saw the connecting point to where when you went into corporate America, you had an expectation that drove you to be excellent.
Yes.
I want you to go back there and tell me, let's talk a little bit about what kind of exposure, because this is really important,
Yes,
what
sir.
you're saying. Mr. Allen and I were just talking about this yesterday, is that a lot of times it doesn't take money to expose your kids and instill that greatness in them. What kind of things did your mom do? What was that exposure that you experienced? Because I heard a little bit of it in private school, stuff like that,
Yes,
but what was done to pour into you first?
Well, I knew I had a gift to play drums.
Okay.
She exposed that when I was 5. She got me private lessons. She put me in a 7-day Adventist school when it was a sacrifice, where I should have been going to a public school.
Right.
She made sure that she cultivated me early with tutorials. The elementary school that I went to was K-7. She found a school that had the only marching band and symphonic band in the city of Atlanta. So in 3rd grade, I'm marching in the marching band. They went to trips that allowed me to be exposed across the country, and she started pouring into me by making sacrifices on her own. This is the first time since my mom was 24, and she's 64, that she's done something for herself, because she's been taking care of me, my grandmother, all of these moments, and with my grandmother's passing, now my mom is getting a chance to experience this reality. Why that's important is there's a show that used to be on TV when I was in high school called In Living Color.
Yeah, I remember that.
And they had a character on there that was Wanda, played by Jamie Foxx.
Yeah, I remember that.
It was a really ugly, big lip, cross-dressing woman. And she didn't know she was ugly. She thought she was very attractive. The only time she was offended is when somebody said you were ugly and insulted her, and it would break her down. The interesting thing is, inside of Jamie Foxx was Wanda, but also inside of Jamie Foxx was Ray. But until somebody exposed him to the opportunity of sketch comedy, he went on a journey of what we would call B and C level movies. But continuing to gain exposure allowed somebody who had access to open the door for the exposure that a few platforms had created for him. And they saw Ray in him while he was Wanda.
Wow.
It's that moment when you gotta have somebody who will expose you and you control the exposure. And then somebody that has access opens the door so that what you've done with your exposure allows you to walk through the door of access. And that's the moments where you start to recognize I'm called to do something greater because he's putting people in my life that helps me gain the exposure. And if I'm diligent with the exposure, somebody will make access and I can walk through the door.
Man, see, that's why we're gonna let you not give me them nuggets, brother. I know you got some more now. You can't just do it your way. Now, all right, the next thing I want to go, man. I see why Mr. Allen is a friend. Now, we didn't really talk, to be honest, so this is good. I'm having a real good interview today. Ain't nobody else having fun. I'm having fun. Now, the next thing I want to talk to you about, you started a business in the midst of the Depression, when we had the economic downturn. But you talked about that team and that your wife believed in the vision. Tell me how important that was when you go through the struggle as an entrepreneur, right? And you ain't bringing that check home, and we can't go out and grab pizza every time like we want. You know what I'm saying? Tell me some of what you dealt with, because that's a reality. And our people that watch this on our feed are entrepreneurs. So tell me the importance of that team effort, that couple, because I'm in the same situation. Me and my wife, my wife and I we're a team, right? Yeah. And so we've had the hard days. So tell me what that was like, and then how you used that to keep the faith, and what you had to do in that, because I know it was some things you had to keep believing and seeing, because from what you say.
Man, that's funny. When you read in Exodus 16, there's a moment where the children of Israel have come out of bondage, and they're in between where they came from and where they've been promised to head.
Okay.
What you have to recognize is there is a terminology that we've made negative that is the second version of the definition in Webster. It's not the primary version. We use this terminology mortician to be somebody dark, negative, really creepy.
Okay.
That's the second definition in the Webster dictionary. The primary definition is a word named undertaker. When you look up the word undertaker, it is actually the synonym to entrepreneur.
Really?
An undertaker is an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is somebody who's comfortable taking calculated risk.
Okay.
So what you have to recognize is there are moments in your life where things have to die. Death means separation. You got to die from what you're afraid of and separate from it, so that you can become the entrepreneur to what you've been promised. And what I had to do is, in that moment of being in my corporate space, take the nuggets that I was supposed to learn, not to stay, but to allow the space to die, take the nuggets, and then live in this next moment.
Right.
That in-between period is much like the wilderness. Wilderness really just is in between. When I get here, I know where I'm supposed to be going, but what I'm doing and what I've been promised doesn't match where I am.
Okay.
The challenge is many of us are connecting ourselves with people who are outside of our purpose. So it starts with purpose. You want to know why you're not having people in your family and in your life push you when you're not there? It's often because you haven't identified your purpose, so you're picking up hitchhikers on a route that you wouldn't be driving on if you were in your purpose. When you find your purpose, the people who are not supposed to be there are not on that street.
Yep, they disappeared.
They disappeared because you wouldn't be going down that route. I happen to have been driving the right route with the right person. And what happened is, as long as I could cast the vision, she was all right with journeying until I reached the vision destination. It was hard. I mean, there was a Domino's up the street from our house that did a $7.99 medium special. I'd take everything I had in the morning, purchase it, and we would divvy up those slices, trying to figure it out. Started working out.
Real talk.
Couldn't keep my membership at LA Fitness. And in faith, found a gym that was a little sweat box. Went in there one day, saw a bodybuilder. I told him, I've been depressed. I don't have enough money, but God told me that I needed to come to you. Would you help me? He said, no problem, man. Come in here every morning at 5:30. I got a membership. I'll just give you my pass and I'll train you. It was the moments where I'm stepping out on faith. Faith is literally about doubt and blindness. If you don't have any doubt, you don't have any faith. If you can see it, It's not faith. So I'm watching these moments. I'm purchasing a set of clippers because when that water gets turned off, I gotta go out here and clip that padlock just so that we can have a little water on it. She rolled with me, man. And to have one person that believed pushed me beyond it. Now the crazy thing is, my mom worked for Coca-Cola for 38 years. She told me to go get a job.
And so many parents do, right?
I never got upset with her because I could not expect from her what was not her rubric or template.
Right.
She was not an entrepreneurial mindset. So what I had to do is persevere so that I could change her perspective. And when it started to grow and I started to invest in my own loan, put all the pieces of the puzzle together and got declined, this was 7 years later. My mom said, so what did you do? I said, well, I did this, I put the loan in place, I got the paperwork, I got the accounting, and they still denied me. She said, how much were you going for? I told her. She said, you've been working at this thing for a long time. Come by here tomorrow. And she wrote me the check for what the loan company denied me because she saw the perseverance, she saw my wife believing in the process, she saw me churning, and the person that told me to go get the job became an investor.
Wow.
It was those moments that sometimes all you need is one cheerleader and it gives you the energy to keep going. I've gone through depression. I've considered suicide. I've wanted to give up. If you don't go through those moments in entrepreneurship, this ain't for you.
Yep. You
so
gotta get there.
those things helped me to develop the alligator skin.
Yep.
To be able to deal with the success.
Yes. No, I have shared those very same moments, and I know exactly what you're saying, and that's why it's so important that as we look at this whole concept of entrepreneurship and looking at where our people come from and what we have to go through in order to make the vision a reality, you gotta have that strong team. You gotta continue to be that strong team. And I love how you said your wife could see the vision, but you had to cast it. So that was that responsibility to always be casting that vision, making it plain, and then figuring out how to keep going after it. But this game is, like Mr. Allen always says, this thing starts in the mind and then to the pocket. And so I had to pull those two little pieces out of the story. I know you could give me a whole lot more. And we need to have another series with our little accidental interview today. But now let's go to the company. Let's talk about the money, all right? So you got this marketing firm started. Things are going well. Tell me kind of who were some of those early clients? How do you get the big projects? What did you do special as an entrepreneur? Because everybody in Black in Atlanta is in marketing, right?
Yeah, that's
so. What got you? What made you help you to prevail and get there?
I started directing.
Are you the only one that's really from Atlanta? Is that what it was?
There are a lot of us, but they're hiding up underneath
all the people from New York and all over the South.
It was interesting, man. I had to figure out again why God was pushing me so much on purpose.
Okay.
And when I recognized that purpose is that one thing that you've been designed to do, that if you don't get it done, it won't get done. Once I identified that my purpose was not marketing, but identifying purpose in people, then marketing became the caveat to allowing me to push purpose through different vehicles. So it became marketing. What I first did was I went to a guy that I knew that was an entrepreneur. That went to college with me. Found out that he was in branding, and I didn't understand entrepreneurship, but I understood business. I partnered with him, and it was good until people started asking for my business card. And all of a sudden, the relationship became uncomfortable for him because many of us as African Americans are good when you're helping us. We're not good when what you helped us do starts helping you.
Right.
What you got to get prepared for in entrepreneurship is the screw. I tell people, if you don't get prepared for the screw, you're not prepared for the success.
Now, what is the screw? Tell me what you're talking about here. This is good.
It is the convenient way of saying getting screwed.
Okay, tell me.
Literally, there will be no success in your life if you haven't had a major screw.
Right.
You cannot look away from the screw. You have to actually expect it. Right. Because once you get screwed, you learn lessons from the screw.
That's true.
That will refine your process.
That is more the truth.
I got screwed. I then get into the process of recognizing that what he called me to do was not a team effort. It was a solo effort. And within that, I started learning, I started growing, I started refining. And from that, I started recognizing that what I was asking for, to ask myself, was I prepared for the prayer I was asking for? So I wanted Coca-Cola because my mom worked there.
Okay.
One of my mentors told me, if you got that contract, how bad would you mess it up and how much money would you need to give back where you are right now? He said, start working your business like that client was here now and build all the contingencies, all of the strategies, and all the framework when you have nothing. And what I started to recognize is people are more prone to follow your vision than they are to follow your money.
Okay.
And I started casting vision again and found a few people who would believe. And all I had to do was turn what I casted into something that we could catch and eat from. And then it started working. I started with one employee. We did this, and I started networking. I started creating relationships, and I started speaking what I wanted to walk. And I started those processes, and I initially started trying to help churches.
Okay.
Because I grew up in church. Quickly found out that if my thought was if I could identify purpose in your people in the church, you wouldn't have to worry about tithes and offering because they would notice what you did for them and they'll give back. I talked to 5 pastors that I thought I knew well.
Okay.
And they said, I'm not interested in helping my people. If you help me, then maybe I'll consider you helping my people. Threw me for a loop, same expression you had.
Yeah.
So I had written a book, my first book, in my office. Wrote 1 chapter, put it down. Got screwed. God, what do you want me to do? Go back to what I told you.
Okay.
Finish the book and get to a conference. I've always been comfortable speaking. Get to a conference that was seemingly by accident. But I started to recognize there are no accidents, it's all providence.
Right.
Got up, did what I was supposed to do, and the guy that was hosting it was the bishop of hospitality for a major conference, a ministry conference. Gives me a table next to the guy that was screwing me. He's got multiple clients, I have none. And out of desperation, the night before, I had him to create a font-based logo. And I said, I can write your book from cover to cover in less than 60 days and put that on the side. The last day of the conference, somebody walks up, and the guy that I had a relationship with recommended the person that walked up. Did an interview with him in his hotel room. He said, I'm trying to write a book. What do you think? And I've always been candidly honest. I thought it sucked. What do I need to do? And as I'm talking, I'm actually developing the process on the fly.
You are literally flying. You building a plane and flying at the same time. I've been there before, brother.
He says, well, how much is the deposit? I never thought anybody was gonna buy it.
Okay.
I made up a number, started fluctuating the process and building it in my head, and in 60 days we started a publishing company. But I created all of the steps for the marketing firm in the
So you already had the infrastructure.
I already had the infrastructure. That put people into the marketing.
Wow.
I refined the process and recognized that I'm not going to be the company that everybody else is.
Okay.
We start with purpose. We focus on we identified the entities that we focus on, and we created a process for marketing, branding, and strategic development. I went and got my MBA to increase the credibility, started working on my PhD for the leadership piece, and started going to the places that I wanted to do business with. Some pastors started biting. Social media made somebody see what I did for a pastor. Companies started calling. Got a relationship with a client that I had from Wachovia, happened to be with McDonald's. That became a client. And then got gaining some major pastors, connected with Mr. Allen, started speaking. This turns into the confidence to become the kingmaker. Started tapping into these pieces, and now the Mark 1 Publishing, KDR Consulting, the international speaking, and then he called me to preach.
Okay.
So it stayed within purpose. I preach from a lens of purpose. Our books are written from a lens of purpose. Our marketing is from a perspective of purpose. The Kingmaker is about helping people identify purpose. Once you find out what you've been purposed to do, the vehicles have the same engine. They just reach different destinations. Wow. And that's how we made it work.
Man, that's so cool. Because, another one, because that's what we use this platform for when we have these conversations. Mr. Allen always asks how many people in the audience can drive a car, and everybody raises their hand. He says how many of y'all can actually build a car? And nobody raised their hand. And so, you know, it's so interesting to hear your story because that's the story of how you built it. Even being able to create the product on the fly, quick, and just making it as you go along. That's just real entrepreneur talk, man. I love it. So I want to also, before we finish up this interview, because I can sit here with you all day, man. We could go all day. So what does the kingmaker mean? You gave us a little nugget of that, and how did that come about?
Got through dealing with a major pastor and wrapped up that contract. It almost looked like a screw.
Okay.
But I was confident that I need to keep my mouth closed and just walk in what God had created for me and help me develop. And a woman saw me on social media. She said, "Your company did the marketing for such and such?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "I didn't know it was a black company." I said, "It's not. I just happen to be black, but the company does." She said,
Exactly.
"Wow, you're a kingmaker." Scared me to death. And I get to church that Sunday, and a guest pastor starts preaching about Daniel.
Okay.
And God says to me, "Listen to this, and this is your template for what I'm calling you to." And what I quickly understood is Daniel was the first kingmaker. From the age he was 16 until he became the third ruler in the kingdom, every king asked him for his advice, even though he had never been a king. But they got Daniel's advice because every king needs somebody that advises them behind the scenes, either beside or behind them, so that during, along, or about the process of popularity, prestige, and success, that person is who they throw their ideas off of to continue to move forward. And it helped me to understand that all of us are kingmakers. It's not gender specific, it's about position and authority.
Wow.
And what it means is it's an individual that gets beside a person or entity and helps advise, counsel, and develop them during or prior to their rise to prominence, prestige, and popularity. And what you have to do is change your perspective, because many of us think leadership is about being out front, and
Right.
we miss the fact that we're not leading because we're not standing in front. Some of the greatest leadership is going to happen beside or behind somebody.
That's true.
And as long as you don't let the position minimize the power, you're king making in whatever context.
Tell me what's going on with the company now. What's on the horizon? What's happening next?
It's an amazing thing, man. We've had our best year in our 11th year. We're now in our 12th year.
Okay.
And we've clearly refined the reality that we're experts at what we do. We are what we call the art of holistic marketing and strategic development. When you think holistic, you think total wellness and health. That's what we want your entity to look like from a marketing standpoint. And what helps us is people think they know what marketing is. They really don't. And as long as people feel that way, we'll always be in business. So we take it from a three-pronged process. If it's marketing, we cover your strategy, segmentation, implementation, integration, and process. If it's branding, custom website and logo design, print media, social media, environmental media, as well as PR marketing. And the bulk of it is strategic development. Why? Because it's hard to sell what you don't own. So we actually go in and do your executive leadership and training. We do your acquisition and retention. We do your escalation and atonement. We do all of your team building and development. And we also focus on what we call people and workflow.
Okay.
Because if you're growing, what's going to happen is your people are either going to increase or decrease because their workflow is going to expand. So, and everybody's not in church.
Yeah.
But everybody's in the marketplace, and the church is not comfortable going to the marketplace.
Wow.
But when you look at the Bible, everybody that we've been preaching about in the Bible, they're not preachers, they're marketplace masters.
Right.
Moses, he is a civil rights leader. Abraham is an agricultural specialist. David is a military leader. Jesus is a carpenter. Paul is so good at tent making that when he goes to revivals and they don't want to pay him, he says, "I'm good because my tent business is bumping." Well, if you look at the biblical template, Jesus does not allow any of his disciples to become apostles until they become good in the marketplace first.
Wow.
So the book is
That
helping
is a
us.
very interesting perspective because, you know, as well, right now we know that church and religion, and that is all in its flux and it's changing. And I've never really heard that perspective put that way about becoming a leader in the marketplace.
If everybody's in the marketplace, how can I have people come to a limited space if I don't go to the space where everybody is? If you hear all of Jesus' parables, if he's talking to a rich man, he talks to him about money. If he's talking to an accountant, he talks about accounting.
Wow.
He doesn't speak to them in church jargon. He knows how to speak their language because he's mastered the marketplace. So the book allows us to understand that for you, if you're in the marketplace, God has called you to minister in your place. You're pastoring what you do. It helps the church not cancel these people out, bring them in, and it helps the church to go outside to understand how they look at things. So that's our next piece, man. And right now, just traveling the country, empowering people, helping out people identify their purpose. We have purpose coaching that has been going amazingly well. We got clients all over the country that we coach with a curriculum that we created week to week, month to month to help you identify your purpose. And I'm just operating in the space that God has given me and trying to make the best of it, optimizing my purpose, my greatness, and success so that it doesn't just impact me, it impacts everybody I'm supposed to reach.
Man, this is the easiest interview I had all day. Cause when bro, we just gotta have you back. We gotta continue to work with you at the Institute, and I think that, like you said, God does not make accidents happen. And so it's just been refreshing. Now, to close out the interview, I normally have a question, but all I'm gonna do is just say, man, what are the last few words you want to share with folks, man? Because you've been dropping nuggets all day.
Wow. Well, let me say this, and it's my belief that in the next 10 to 15 years, we are in a season of what I call death. Why is that? Because if you were born anytime between 1954 to 1978, you're about to see people that you love and have been connected to start dying off. Why? Because we're finding that the seasons of life have components of them where death starts to happen. Death, by the definition, is only separation. And what we've got to learn is that our lives are placed right now in this season to be finding ourselves successful in the midst of separation. You've got to figure out how to let some stuff in your life die. You've got to let some bad thoughts die. You've got to let some bad people die. You've got to let some of your fears die. And when those things start to happen, what you start to find is there is no seed that reaps any fruit until separation of the seed happens. So what's in the seed can come out of the seed. If the seed never dies or separates, there's no growth, there's no fruit, there's no opportunity. And there's an entrepreneur, a visionary, a minister, somebody who is afraid of the death that's about to happen. Learn how to smile in the face of death, in the face of separation, and watch that when he starts allowing stuff to drop off in your life, that it is indicative that you're about to be elevated. You will not find yourself elevating to the next level as long as you've got too much weight on the level that you're on. There's only two things that we can do. If I go and fly commercial at Hartsfield-Jackson, I can pay a little bit more, I can get my sky miles up, I can get on before you get on. But when we get on, everybody that paid for that flight is going on that plane. But if my itinerary gets heavy enough and I can now get a charter flight and go to Charlie Brown Airport, Fulton County, I now don't have to go through measuring my liquids. I can pull up to the clearport. I can tell them when I want to take off. The plane is smaller. They don't do a lot of checks. The security is greater, but I paid more. So the seats are for people who paid the same price. And if you are trying to fly at a higher altitude, check your circle. Stop letting people fly who've not paid the price. And if it's your moment, elevate by separating. If you do that, you'll find yourself in your moment of success. Wake up the king in you. Make sure that you keep nurturing those seeds of purpose, greatness, and success, and watch what he's given you. Fertilize others, cultivate others, provide shelter for others, because he's blessed you not for you, but for you to be a blessing to you all.
From the Kingmaker. Man, appreciate having you here today, man. You made Feature Friday an awesome Feature Friday.
I'm honored. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much. All right, that concludes this Feature Friday. We have a couple more guests coming back this evening, but that's again another great segment. This is the kind of stuff that's always happening here at the AEI Startup Factory. We'll see you on the next Feature Friday.